There's a moment, and if you've been here before, you know exactly the one I'm talking about, where you're lying there afterward and you're thinking, did that mean what I felt like it meant? Or am I doing it again? Am I seeing something that isn't there? And the hardest part isn't the uncertainty. The hardest part is that you've been wrong before. You've read warmth as depth. You've read consistency as commitment. You've read chemistry as connection. And it cost you. So now you second guess the very instincts that were trying to protect you. And you're stuck in this impossible in-between, afraid to trust what you feel, but more afraid of what it means if you stop feeling it. Here's what I want to tell you. What almost nobody in your life has the language to tell you clearly. The answer was never in what happened. It was in what happened before. In the small, unscripted, uncurated moments before everything else. That's where the real signal lives. That's where the man in front of you cannot perform, only reveal. Most women are looking for the answer in the wrong place entirely. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which behaviors, quiet, specific, observable, reveal that a man has already crossed from casual interest into something far more significant. And you will know how to read them with confidence, not confusion. Let's go. I want to start by being honest with you about something. The dating landscape has made emotional literacy harder than it should be. You are navigating a world where men have learned to present warmth without vulnerability, attention without intention, and intimacy without investment. Where I really like spending time with you can mean 100 different things depending entirely on what he does next. Where consistency, the one thing you were always told to look for, can be the most misleading signal of all. Because some men are consistently keeping you at exactly the right distance. You've been trying so hard to read the situation correctly. You've been watching his behavior, measuring his words, paying attention to the gap between what he says and what he does. You've been doing all the right things, and still, the clarity won't quite come. Here's what I think is happening. You've been taught to look for the big signals, the relationship conversation, the introduction to his friends, the future plans. And yes, those things matter enormously. But they come later. They come after a man has already decided internally how he feels about you. And the problem is that most women are waiting for those later signals while missing the earlier ones, the ones that reveal his decision before he's even fully conscious of having made it. The behaviors we're going to talk about today happen before the later signals arrive. They are the precursors, the tells, the moments where a man's emotional interior becomes briefly visible, not because he planned to show you, but because real feeling has a way of leaking through even the most carefully maintained composure. And here's what makes them so powerful as signals. He cannot fake them without extraordinary effort. Performance requires awareness. And these moments happen below the level of his awareness. 9 of them. We're going through all 9. Stay with me until number 4. It's the one that's going to rearrange something in how you think about men for the rest of your life. This one is so ordinary that most women walk right past it. And yet it is one of the most telling signals of genuine intention that exists in modern dating. We live in a world where a phone is an escape hatch. Whenever a moment becomes uncomfortable, whenever vulnerability starts to creep in, whenever the pull of the digital world feels stronger than the demands of the real one, the phone is there, available, ready to absorb attention that would otherwise have to be directed at an actual person. Watch what he does with his phone when he arrives, not after, when he arrives. A man who is there for the experience, for the thrill or the convenience, will keep his phone accessible, nearby, face up or easily reachable, because he hasn't fully committed to being there. Some part of him still has one foot in the other world, and that foot is the part of him that isn't fully invested in you. A man who came to be with you, specifically you, not just the idea of a warm evening, tends to put his phone away with a kind of quiet finality. Not dramatically, not as a performance of presence, just away. Because where he is matters to him more than whatever is happening on a screen. Because he already decided before he walked through your door that this time, this evening, this person deserves his undivided attention. Think of Priya, who had been seeing a man for about 2 months. She noticed something she couldn't quite name for the first few weeks. Then she realized every time Tom arrived, his phone was in his pocket by the time he reached her door. Not something he put away when he sat down, not something he placed face down after a final check. Already in his pocket, like he'd made the decision in the car or on the way up her path. Like getting to her was already the event, and anything else was background noise. She said that detail made her feel, quietly and consistently, like she was someone worth arriving for. A man who puts his phone away before he sits down is a man who decided you were worth his full attention before he even walked in the door. But here's where it gets interesting. Memory is intimacy in disguise. When a man genuinely cares about you, not just about the shape of time you spend together, but about you as a person, he retains details. Not because he's made a list, not because he's working to impress you, but because things you say to him actually land. They find a place in him and stay there. And he references them later without thinking about it, the way you'd reference anything that mattered to you. Before intimacy, in that window of arrival, of conversation, of being together, before anything else, a man who is falling for you will surface something small, something you mentioned last time, something you said in passing that you probably assumed he forgot. How's your mum doing? You said she'd been unwell. Or, did you ever hear back about that job? Or just, you seem happier than last Tuesday. Something good happen? These are not lines. They are not strategy. They are the natural overflow of a man who carries you with him between the times you're together. And they communicate something that no grand gesture can replicate. I was thinking about you when you weren't there. That is the signal, not the memory itself, but what the memory proves. It proves continuity. It proves that you are not just vivid when you're present and forgotten when you're absent. You are carried. You exist in him between the encounters. And a man who carries you between encounters is a man who is building something, whether he calls it that yet or not. Emma told me about a man she dated briefly who was objectively charming, objectively attentive when she was in the room, and yet never once referenced anything from a previous conversation. Every evening felt like a clean reset, exciting but strangely hollow. Then she met someone different, Someone who within the first few minutes of every time they were together would mention something she'd told him before. Not to show off, just because it was part of how he related to her. She said for the first time in years, she felt like she had a continuity with someone, like she was a person with a history to him, not just a pleasant presence in his current moment. A man who remembers the small things isn't just being attentive. He's showing you that the real you, the ordinary, everyday you, is the one he's been thinking about. Now, this next one might genuinely stop you in your tracks. This is the one that separates the men who are capable of genuine love from the men who are capable of only comfortable proximity. And once you understand it, you will see it, or its absence, with absolute clarity. When you arrive, or when you're together and the evening begins to shift towards something more intimate, where is his attention? Is it on the moment? On the energy in the room? On what seems to be heading where? On his own desire and what he hopes happens? Or is it on you? On how you actually seem tonight? On whether something is different? On whether what you're bringing into this space is ease or sadness or exhaustion or joy? A man who is primarily invested in the moment is tracking the moment. He is reading the room, and specifically, he is reading the room as a sequence of conditions that lead somewhere he wants to go. A man who is primarily invested in you is reading you. He notices that you seem quieter than usual. He notices that your laugh is slightly effortful tonight. He notices that something is sitting behind your eyes that wasn't there last week. And rather than moving past it, rather than deciding not to address it because addressing it might disrupt the trajectory of the evening, he stops. He asks. He creates space for whatever is actually true for you to exist in the room between you. Think about that for a second. That choice to prioritize your actual emotional state over the direction he hoped the evening would go is an act of genuine love. Not romantic love necessarily, not yet, but love in the deepest sense of the word. Choosing the real well-being of another person over your own immediate desire. There's a woman called Diana who came to me after years in a relationship that always felt slightly off. She couldn't name why for the longest time. Then, in a later relationship with a man who was genuinely good for her, she finally identified it. Her first partner, however kind in other ways, never once, not in 3 years, noticed when she walked in carrying something. He was always so excited to see her that he moved immediately toward what the evening could be, never pausing for what the evening was. The second man would sometimes take her face in his hands when she arrived and just look at her for a moment, not performing romance, just genuinely reading her. And if something was there, he'd say quietly, "What is it?" Just that. What is it? 2 words that meant, "I see you, all of you, not just the version that's ready for this evening." She said those 2 words, repeated across months and eventually years, were the whole relationship in miniature. A man who reads your energy before he reads the room is a man who came here for you. The full, complicated, tonight version of you. Not just for what the evening can become. And if you think that was powerful, wait for this. Laughter is one of the most underrated signals in dating. And I don't mean surface laughter, the polite chuckle you offer someone who is clearly trying to be charming. I mean the real thing. The laughter that comes when someone has understood you well enough to find the exact angle that breaks through your composure. Before intimacy, a man who genuinely sees you as more than casual will make you laugh in a way that has nothing to do with what comes next. He's not using humor as a warm-up. He's not deploying lightness as a technique to lower your guard. He's laughing with you because being with you is fun to him, because he actually enjoys you as a person for who you are. And that enjoyment has no agenda attached to it. This matters more than it sounds, because a man who is only there for one thing tends to run humor as a function. He's charming and funny in the way a salesperson is charming and funny. Skilled, perhaps, but directed at a result. When you laugh, he marks it internally as progress. When a conversation becomes genuinely funny and meandering and loses the thread entirely, when you end up 20 minutes deep in an absurd tangent about something completely irrelevant, a man with an agenda gets subtly restless. He enjoyed the diversion, but needs to get back on track. A man who is genuinely falling for you, he loves the tangent. He follows it further. He has no track to get back to. Because this easy, ridiculous, alive conversation, this is the thing he came for. Gabrielle said she knew she was in something real when she and the man she was seeing spent 45 minutes before anything else happened just making each other laugh about increasingly absurd hypothetical scenarios. The kind of conversation that serves absolutely no purpose except joy. And she realized partway through that he wasn't restless. He wasn't steering. He was delighted, genuinely, unperformatively delighted to just be with her and for it to feel like this. She said, "I thought I was looking for someone who made me feel desired. I didn't know I was also looking for someone who made me feel fun." When a man laughs with you and loses track of time and doesn't need the evening to go anywhere specific, he's already exactly where he wants to be. This is one of the most quietly powerful principles I know, and it applies across relationships in every form. But it shows up with particular clarity in intimate dynamics. A man of genuine character and genuine feeling moves reciprocally. He gives before he asks for the same in return. He offers his own vulnerability before he expects yours. He creates emotional safety before he asks you to be emotionally present. He makes himself available fully, attentively, without distraction, before he asks the same level of presence from you. In practical terms, before physical intimacy, a man who sees you as genuinely significant tends to have already given you something of himself. He's told you something real. He's been honest about something that cost him a little to say. He's been present with you in a moment that required more than just showing up. He has already made some kind of investment in understanding you, in caring about your experience, in making space for who you actually are. And the man who has given nothing of himself first, who arrives expecting access to your intimacy, having deposited nothing into the emotional account between you, that man is operating transactionally. He may not frame it that way. He may not even be conscious of it. But the imbalance is real. And you can feel it even if you've been trained to dismiss what you feel as being too needy. You are not too needy. You are appropriately calibrated to the difference between a man who has earned closeness and a man who expects it.
Nadia described a pattern she kept falling into. Men who were incredibly eager for physical closeness, but somehow never quite available for the slower, less exciting work of emotional closeness. And she kept telling herself the physical would lead to the emotional, that once they were close in one way, the other kind of closeness would follow. It almost never did. Then she met someone who, over several weeks, had gradually offered her real parts of himself. His uncertainty about his career, his complicated relationship with his father, his genuine fear of getting things wrong with her. And she realized, by the time physical intimacy arrived between them, she already knew him. He had already given. And what followed felt like it belonged to something larger. Because it did. Real intimacy flows toward the person who has already given something real. And a man who gives first, before asking for anything in return, is telling you that he values the relationship more than the moment. Now, this next one is one most people never even think to look for. There's a quality that the best, most attuned people bring to intimacy. And it is the quality of narrowing, of making the world smaller until it contains only the two of you. This is not just about putting the phone away, which we talked about earlier. This is more than that. It's a felt quality. It's the way his body orients toward you, not toward the room, not toward the television, not toward whatever else is happening. It's the way his voice drops slightly, becomes quieter, as if he's aware that what he's saying is for you specifically, and he doesn't need it to carry further than that. It's the way he unconsciously reduces the physical distance, not in a pressuring way, but in the way of someone who is drawn toward warmth. It is the feeling of being the center of someone's world for this stretch of time. Not performed at, not managed, actually centered. A man who is casual about you, who likes you but isn't falling, doesn't narrow. He remains somewhat diffuse, somewhat distributed across the room, the evening, the background noise of his life. He is there with you, but there's a slight quality of him being there with the general situation as much as with you specifically. You can feel it. It's not dramatic, but it creates a subtle sense of not quite being fully arrived at. The man who narrows the world, who somehow, without a word being said about it, makes it feel like the two of you are in a slightly different version of reality than the rest of the room, that man has already crossed a line. That narrowing is not a choice he's making. It's a consequence of how he feels. When someone matters to you, you orient toward them. It's involuntary. It's biological. And it is one of the most honest signals a human being can offer another. Think about a time, even just once, when someone's full attention was on you in that way. When you felt like the most real, most important, most present thing in the room to another person. Do you remember how that felt? Like being lit up, like being chosen, like arriving somewhere you'd been trying to get to for a long time. You deserve to feel that consistently, not occasionally, consistently. When a man narrows the world down to just you without being asked, he isn't being romantic on purpose. He's showing you that in his interior world, you already take up the most space. Almost there, two more that will bring everything into focus. Here's one that almost nobody talks about, and yet it is extraordinarily revealing. Watch how he treats the time before intimacy in terms of timeline. Is he moving towards something? Is there an invisible clock he's watching? A subtle sense that the evening has a schedule that he's hoping you're both on track for? Or is he loose with the time? Is he happy to let the evening find its own shape? Does he sit with you in conversation past the point where it would have been natural to accelerate? Not because he's nervous, but because he's comfortable. Because being here in this version of the evening is already the thing he wanted. A man who is primarily there for the physical destination unconsciously treats everything before it as preamble. And preamble has an implied ending. An implied, okay, but when do we get to the part where it's subtle, but you feel it as a kind of low-level pressure? Like the conversation has a direction even when the direction is unspoken. A man who is falling for you has no preamble. He has evenings. He has time with a person he genuinely wants to be around. And if that time ends with a long, lingering goodbye on a doorstep where neither of you quite wants to be the first to leave, and nothing more happened than talking and laughing and being together, he considers that an excellent evening, not a failed one. Kezia told me about a man who 3 times in their early weeks ended the evening by standing at her door and talking for another 45 minutes after he was supposed to leave. Not maneuvering for an invitation inside, just genuinely reluctant to end the conversation. She said she'd never experienced that before. A man who seemed to find the leaving hard, not the staying convenient. And that difficulty with leaving told her something that every text and every plan and every compliment he'd ever given her hadn't quite said clearly enough. He was already in this. He didn't want the evening to end because the evening, the ordinary, unconverted evening, was the thing he'd come for. A man who lingers at the door without agenda, who finds the leaving hard, has already decided that time with you is the reward, not just the means to one. And finally, the one that makes everything else make sense. There are men who move toward intimacy the way people move toward a destination. Efficient, directed, the path between A and B navigated as cleanly as possible. And then there are men who, before anything else happens, create a moment. It doesn't have to be grand, it rarely is. It might be him pausing to really look at you. Not scanning, not assessing, just looking with something soft and undefended in his eyes. It might be him holding your face between his hands for a second, not doing anything, just holding it. It might be him saying something quiet and specific and slightly unplanned, something that clearly came from somewhere real in him rather than from a script. It might be him resting his forehead against yours or pulling you into his chest for a moment that has no destination, that is complete in itself. What all of these have in common is this: he chose to make the moment sacred before anything else arrived. He chose to draw a circle around right now, around the two of you, as you are tonight, and say without words, this matters. You matter. This moment between us, before anything else, matters. That is not a behavior you produce by effort. You cannot decide to create a moment like that if the feeling behind it is not there. It comes from somewhere that words don't always reach, from the part of a person that knows what they value and moves toward it even when the movement is wordless and unplanned. And here is what I want you to understand about that moment when it happens. It is not the beginning of something. It is the evidence of something that has already begun in him. The feeling that produces that moment, the tenderness, the reverence, the desire to slow time down around a specific person, that feeling existed before tonight. It was building in the weeks before, in the conversations and the laughter and the small memories and the long goodbyes. That moment is not a first step. It is an overflow. It is what happens when a feeling becomes too large for the ordinary containers people usually put it in. When you experience that moment, trust it. Not blindly, not as a guarantee of where things go from here, but as a real signal from a real person who is, in the most honest language available to him, telling you what you mean to him. Alexandra had dated a man for several months before she experienced this. He'd been good, attentive, consistent, someone she cared for. But she had this persistent, faint doubt that she couldn't quite resolve. Then, one evening, before anything else happened, he stopped moving and just looked at her. For long enough that it wasn't accidental. Long enough that she felt slightly exposed. And then quietly, almost to himself, he said, "I don't think I tell you enough how glad I am that you exist." She said the doubt dissolved in that sentence. Not because the sentence was beautiful, though it was, but because she could feel that he hadn't planned it, that it had escaped him, that his feeling for her had simply, in that unguarded moment, become bigger than his habit of keeping himself composed. That, she said, was when she knew. The moment a man creates before the moment, the pause, the look, the unplanned tenderness, is not the beginning of his feeling for you. It is the overflow of something that has been building since the first time he realized you were someone worth falling for. This last one is short, precise, and it cuts through everything. There is a version of care that is really a form of management. It sounds like, "Are you okay?" But what it means is, "Please be okay, because I need you to be okay for this evening to go the way I want it to." It is concern directed not at you, but at the conditions he needs in place. And then there is real care. Real care asks what you need and is genuinely prepared to provide it, whatever it is, even if it's not what he was hoping for. Do you want to just talk tonight? We don't have to do anything. Said and meant. Said with no trace of suppressed frustration or coded disappointment. A man who sees you as more than casual has the emotional maturity to hold space for your actual needs, even when those needs inconvenience his. He doesn't need you to perform readiness or enthusiasm you don't have. He doesn't need the evening to go a certain way badly enough that he'll paper over your actual state to get there. He needs you. Not a version of you that's been gently managed into the right configuration. He needs the real you. Tonight's version, whatever that is, to feel cared for and seen and valued. And he is willing to structure the entire evening around that need if necessary, even at the cost of what he was hoping for. That kind of care is extraordinarily rare. And when you find it, when you find a man who is more interested in your actual experience than in managing the evening toward his preferred outcome, hold on to it. Not desperately, with both hands open, the way you hold something precious that you trust not to leave. A man who asks what you need and is genuinely prepared to give it, whatever it is, has chosen your well-being over his desires. That choice, made consistently, is what love looks like before it has a name. We've covered 9 of the most honest, unperformable signals a man gives you before intimacy. Signals that reveal beneath all the surface behavior whether what he's building toward is something real. He arrives present, phone already away. He remembers the small things without being reminded. He reads your energy, not just the room's energy. He makes you laugh without needing the evening to go anywhere. He gives before he asks for anything in return. He narrows the world down until it contains only you. He doesn't rush the good night, even before a single significant thing has happened. He creates a moment before the moment arrives. And he checks what you actually need, not what he needs you to be. None of these are grand gestures. None of them require money or planning or performance. Every single one of them requires only one thing: that a man has genuinely, honestly begun to fall for you. And when a man has genuinely begun to fall, these behaviors are not choices, they are consequences. They are what real feeling does when it encounters a real person. Here is what I want to leave you with. Stop looking for certainty in words. Words are easy. I really like you is easy. Words can be calibrated, optimized, deployed at the right moment for the right effect. But the behaviors we talked about today, the quiet, specific, unscripted ones, those cannot be sustained by a man whose feelings don't match them. They are too small to perform for long. They are too ordinary to be strategic. They are simply what love looks like in its earliest, most honest form, before it has learned to dress itself up in declarations and milestones. And you with your good instincts and your hard-won wisdom and your refusal to accept another half-hearted almost, you are capable of recognizing these things. You have always been capable of recognizing them. You just needed the language. You have it now. Use it with confidence. Trust what you see. Trust what you feel when someone gives you these things, and trust what you feel when someone consistently withholds them. Your clarity is not naivety. Your standards are not too high. Your desire to be fully, specifically, tenderly chosen is not too much to ask. It is exactly the right amount to ask. This is your moment. Don't waste it. If this video gave you something, a framework, a word for something you've been feeling, a clarity you've been reaching for, then subscribe right now, because every week we bring you exactly this kind of insight. And make sure you watch this next video, 9 things a man does when he's in love but protecting himself. Because what we talked about today is the beginning of the story, and that video will show you what happens in the next chapter. I'll see you there.